Hello, and welcome to this brand new episode of my journey to the 3D Zelda challenge, where you probably will need to wait just as long as Zelda herself, as she's waiting for Link to wake up from his slumber in order to see this challenge's end. Dare I say, this will take so long that Breath of the Wild 2 will have been released long before I'll be done with it. Well, anyway, the past year definitely has been interesting. After learning Twilight Princess any % last year and doing runs, I eventually got a complete speedrunning burnout, which basically has been the basis for my two previous videos. However, I recently managed to pull myself back up and rekindle my passion for speedrunning by attempting to finally beat my almost 2 years old goal of beating my 3316 PB from Breath of the Wild any %. And I thought, why the hell not therefore making the next episode of the Journey to the 3D Zelda challenge about this one. I initially intended on making it the last episode, but heck, it's my journey, I decide how it will go. So, how will this video be structured? While it is true that unlike in the previous video, there is a difference in that I actually already do know very well this category, while I usually would have the perspective of a noob when making those videos, I still want to keep an overall similar structure. So, we'll start off with an overview of the surrounding context of the any % category. After that, we'll go through a breakdown of how the run goes. And after that, we'll be discussing the resources to learn the category if you want to learn it. And finally, the marathon safety of the run. With that out of the way, it's now time to move on to the first section.
You know, before this stream started, we were kind of joking about you can probably take on Ganon with just as he is in the Noon, and you really can do that. That's how much freedom this game offers.
Breath of the Wild was just bound to be of heavy interest for speedrunners. Before the game was even released, we pretty much already knew that we could get to Ganon basically right from the start. This very fact is what makes Breath of the Wild any % stand quite a lot compared to the other categories involved in the 3D Zelda challenge. There is no major sequence breaking outside of skipping the introduction cutscene and activating the Great Plateau Tower, and this run just follows the minimum requirements that the game itself sets to beat the game, just done quick. Of course, we'll be discussing said requirements in more details in the next section, but when speaking of the overall context, it can hence be said that the overall roadmap of the run has stayed the same since the beginning. Wake up in the Shrine of Resurrection, complete the Great Plateau, get to Hyrule Castle, beat Calamity Ganon. That's it. Whether you look at this run from a 2017 perspective or a 2021 perspective, this structure still applies. So what has changed in those years? Most of the optimizations come from movement tech. The best example of a section of the run that got completely annihilated over the years is moving between the plateau to the castle. Where at the beginning runners had to jump off plateau and grab a horse to run all the way to the castle, it then evolved into using a boulder and trees and to combine stasis launches and super launches when that was discovered, which allowed runners to launch themselves at what was thought at the time as the fastest speeds you could reach. How little did they know. So, Hyrule Field became a bunch of bouncing around, but then that got destroyed even more with the discovery of bullet time bounces, which then became the now current fastest method of traveling, allowing traveling directly from the Temple of Time to Hyrule Castle in barely a minute. Of course, other major discoveries such as wind bombs completely changed Breath of the Wild speedrunning, but their most significant impacts actually come in longer categories for the most part. Now, just a bit earlier, I mentioned that there was minor sequence breaking, and indeed that comes in the form of clipping out of the Shrine of Resurrection at the very beginning of the run, which therefore skips the entire set of cutscenes when exiting the shrine, and it also comes under the form of shield clipping inside the shrines, which is required since the Great Plateau Tower is skipped, meaning that activating the shrines with the Sheikah Slate is not possible. While the sequence breaks do allow for faster completion of the Great Plateau, it doesn't necessarily change the structure and the requirements of the run as a whole. With all that considered, this is why Breath of the Wild any % is a category that usually tends to remain fairly similar throughout the years. In theory, outside of optimizations in speed tech and other techniques to get around the world faster, chances are that any % is going to generally remain the same. However, one potential sequence break that could shatter it, in theory, would be the infamous Great Plateau Skip, which I suppose would be the equivalent of Barrier Skip for Wind Waker, back when that was still the holy grail of speedrunning. I did make a video on that topic some time ago if you are interested to know more about that. Since we've been talking a lot about the structure of the run and sequence breaking, it is now time to move on to the second section of this video. The run starts as it should with Link waking up in the Shrine of Resurrection. Once awake, we grab the Sheikah Slate and then clip out of bounds by placing Link on a certain angle on the wall and placing the camera in a specific angle and then opening the scope. After that, we climb up and go back in bounds and proceed to make our way to the Stasis Shrine, making sure to grab an axe, a shield and a bow on the way. We then perform a shield clip, or ESC if you are fancy, in order to enter the shrine, after which we obtain the Stasis Rune and then complete the shrine. Once we are out, we have our first bit of dialogue with the old man. Funnily enough, he's gonna be talking to you about getting back to the tower, when there is no tower at all. Once that's done, we use a boulder to get up on the ledge, after which we perform a bullet time bounce to quickly get to the Cryonis Shrine. Once we enter again using a shield clip or ESC, we get the Cryonis Rune and complete the shrine. At this point, this is basically rinse and repeat for both the Magnesis Shrine and the Bomb Shrine. After they are both completed and have therefore all 4 plateau shrines done, the old man ominously drops in to tell us to get to the Temple of Time. We rush there, while also thinking of grabbing a beetle if playing no amiibo. And then, once witnessing the old man being revealed as the King of Hyrule, we skip on him talking about his life story and just grab the paraglider from him. Now, this is where the fun begins. With the paraglider now obtained, we can now perform the bullet time bounce that gets us all the way to Hyrule Castle. Once we land, the precise actions depend on whether you play the amiibo or no amiibo version of the category, but assuming no amiibo, you would save and pray to Hylia and the Golden Goddesses that you can get a banana out of this crate, which I can tell you, by first-hand experience, is the source of trauma for lots of people. Once you do have a banana, we proceed to go around the castle to obtain extra weapons. After that, we get cooking in order to obtain a level 3 attack potion. Once that's done, we rush to the Sanctum using wind bombs, beat all the blights, then face climb Ganon, and then finally, the on-rail shooter final level of the game where it's impossible to die. No! Well, I meant Dark Beast Ganon. We send the final arrow and kill him, and thus, Breath of the Wild 80% is now complete. As you can see, Breath of the Wild 80% remains quite simpler in concept compared to runs such as, let's say, Skyward Sword 80%, where it can be quite confusing to understand the impacts of back in time and how everything connects when you start off. I mean, honestly, speedrunning that game as a whole requires a brain, and that's one of the things I'm missing, so, you know, no surprise that even if I technically did many runs of the 80% category for that one, I still get a bit confused with it. Anyway, yes, Breath of the Wild is definitely simpler in that regard. However, while it may be simpler in the concept, it is hard in practicality, and thus, we shall now move on to the next section of this video. One good thing about this game is that it has an extensive amount of resources. If you go on the Breath of the Wild speedrunning Discord server, which is linked in the description of this video, you will see that there is a resources channel, which will contain pretty much the far majority of what you will need to get started. Most famously, there is the 80% tutorial series by Limcube from 2019 that is most definitely a great place to start if you want to get into this category. However, beyond the main category tutorials, it is definitely wise to potentially take a look at tutorials and explanation videos about certain speedrunning mechanics, so you may gain a deeper understanding of them. If we are to take a look, for example, at shield clipping, bullet time bounces, and wind bombs as areas that would be good to have a better understanding of, then resources I would definitely recommend you check out would include this playlist made by Swiffy, which includes a variety of video tutorials and explanations on a variety of topics made by a wide range of people. What's more, this playlist is regularly updated, so if there's any updated tutorials or new things discovered, chances are that you should find the appropriate videos there. Of course, those resources include material that goes way beyond 80%, but something I will add to that is it's not because I am a scrub that only plays 80% that I don't think this extra knowledge isn't useful. As a rule of thumb, the more you understand about the game, the better. I might just very sneakily add that I did make a tips and tricks video about Breath of the Wild 80% a few years ago, but let me tell you, it is so outdated that I don't think you'd really gain anything from it. That was my one contribution to the community, and it's useless now. Of course, What I have talked about so far is mainly video resources, of which there are a lot of, but there are plenty of other written resources that can be found on the Breath of the Wild speedrunning Discord. This would include, for instance, various route documents, or even tools such as the object map, which while it won't necessarily be of use for anyone looking to learn any percent, it is still a godsend as a whole for this game in general. As a whole, there is so much stuff in there that I couldn't possibly cover it all, but that's a good thing, because it means that despite the game having some quite difficult sections to learn, such as doing all Blights and then Calamity Ganon back to back, it still remains very much accessible for new players, and I can't encourage you more than that to just hop in and try. Now of course, is it any different when trying to complete this run in a marathon context, as such with the 3D Zelda challenge? This is what we'll discuss in the next section. Assuming that I actually do this challenge before Breath of the Wild 2 is released, because I am very slow, which, as I realize, is probably not the best thing to say when talking about speedrunning. Well, anyway, this run will have the honor of being the final run of the challenge, as it will be ran with the chronological order of release, so Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, Skyward Sword, and finally, Breath of the Wild. And here insert Breath of the Wild 2, because obviously I'll take so long to learn all the other games that Breath of the Wild 2 will be released by then, meaning that I will also need to be adding Breath of the Wild 2 any percent in there. With that in consideration, this run surely will be the climax of the challenge. Luckily for us, Breath of the Wild 80% is a run that has a lot of room for safety, so long as the time is taken to set it up. By that, I mean, for example, grabbing extra food than would usually be needed. Perhaps even grabbing a few extra weapons here and there. Things like that. Extra food is an especially important one when considering the fact that wind bombs require taking damage, and while they aren't necessary per se to complete the run, they definitely help in making it fast. So having extra food to accommodate for fails or even fall damage is definitely a good idea. This is without mentioning other moments in the run where having extra food to heal up can be beneficial, such as at the beginning of the run when trying to grab the bow from this bokoblin, but then getting hit. I hate this bokoblin and it deserves to die, okay? It has killed so many rounds by now that I will rage. In any case, there is one very useful mechanic in Breath of the Wild that is very convenient to use in a marathon context, which is its saving feature. Most of the 3D Zelda game save system is based on reloading at the beginning of an area if you save and quit to then reload. There is also the Majora's Mask and Skyward Sword system, which is based on save points. Now, to be fair, both systems bring their own advantages when it comes to speedruns, especially for Skyward Sword, but in the case of Breath of the Wild, its saving system means that if you ever approach a difficult moment, you can just save and reload if you fail. This significantly reduces the pressure there is while doing the run, as that means that it is possible to just reload as many times as needed if there is struggle in going on with the run. With all of that said, despite everything that the game provides for marathon safety, this run still remains the climax of the run, and it does so by upping the pressure by a ton. How, you ask? Well, through the final battle between the Blights and Calamity Ganon. See, if you die at any point during that battle, you will restart right before entering the Sanctum, and you have to restart the whole battle all over again. I like to briefly remind that you only have 3 hearts when doing this, so dying is something that can easily happen. If you consider extra factors like the RNG involved in having enough arrows to deal with Calamity Ganon comfortable, or even whether he will go straight to the fucking wall on the second phase and deal an attack that you struggle to parry and fucking die, this can definitely contribute in making this fight go from under control to not under control. Very luckily though, once Calamity Ganon himself is defeated and the battle against Dark Beast Ganon starts, it is basically a breeze. The fight itself is very easy, and dying there is just impossible. No! Yes, okay, I got it, alright? I did die at Dark Beast Ganon. Let's be honest, everyone did it at some point. Well, either way, with all that said, that's it for today. I felt that it was very important to make this episode of the journey to the 3D Zelda challenge on Breath of the Wild, simply because it is also part of my journey to get back into speedrunning. I know it's something I keep mentioning again and again and again, but my speedrun burnout really is something that led me to a lot of thinking. And by approaching Breath of the Wild with a new mindset, I feel like this will contribute in making my journey to the 3D Zelda challenge much smoother. Do you have any particular advice on mindset while speedrunning that you would like to share? You can talk about them in the comments below. Either way, we've now got 3 more games to go through: Wind Waker, Ocarina of Time, and Majora's Mask. Yes, I know there's already an Ocarina of Time video, But please let me quickly sweep that under the rug after I decided to do a different category, okay? Anyway, once we're done with all of that, whenever that may be, it will be time to get revising on the other games, being Skyward Sword and Twilight Princess, and after that, finally, the challenge will be on. All of that will be happening on my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Picastroph, where we'll be getting there, eventually, one step at a time. Chances are I still will be doing some Breath of the Wild 80% work up until I have a satisfied time before I move on to my next game, but we will get there eventually. Thank you everyone, and enjoy your day!